it up for any open comments. If there are any, I want to make sure we offer anybody an opportunity that has a comment and would like to speak.
I do kind of have a small one, or a big one, I don't know. I have a concern that when we do all the testing, that our special education teachers are pulling the children one at a time and the other kids aren't getting their services, especially during the SOL time of year. It has a big impact on our kids. It almost threw my kid into a self-contained classroom because he wasn't getting the support he needed in his gen ed classroom. So I wanted to see if there's, I know and this also is the same with we pull gen ed teachers at times and they hire substitutes, and why can't we have the substitute help with the testing? Can we find somebody else to help these kids individually with their testing so that the special ed and even gen ed teachers are still in the classroom for our students?
It's a dilemma, but there's a reason why, say for example, just as when we have IEP meetings or reevaluation meetings or something like that, a case carrier or other service providers need to be in the meeting at the table away from their students for however long that happens, because they are the ones who know the children and can speak to the items that need to be talked about in the team meeting. And when they're in the meeting, they're not available to be in the classroom. A sub can be, or an assistant or an alternate person can be in the classroom with the children, but then the children they're getting supervised by someone who is not their teacher and not as familiar with what the routine is. And when students, when it is a major testing time, staff who know students well and are very familiar with what their accommodations are need to be available to implement the accommodations with the test. Say for example, some students may need certain cueing or prompting or opportunity for breaks or a variety of other things, and some of the subtle behaviors that the student might be displaying, this student needs a break. The teacher can know just by looking at the student that he or she is approaching that point where they need to take a break. As a stranger who is proctoring the exam, they don't really know what the student needs for an accommodation. They're not very familiar, and it creates an added unfamiliar situation in the testing environment that may be less helpful to a student. But at the same time, when teachers are implementing testing accommodations for one-on-one or a small group pull-out, then they are not with their students giving instruction. If there are classes still having instruction going on right then, if we get subs to cover one, they wouldn't be with the other. The same people who have the expertise with children, they need to be there in the testing environment as well as for instruction. That's part of the reason why, for the high schools anyway, usually it's in the week of Memorial Day, there is a limited school, usually there's a delayed start time so that there can be major testing going on in the morning, and if students are not testing, then they don't have class, and they come in a little bit later in the day, and that allows for people who need to implement accommodations to be available, and then they can have class in the afternoon. But because of the volume of tests and the number of students who need one-on-one or very small group, the testing window can sometimes last 3 or maybe almost 4 weeks. And trying to find the right balance of giving kids the right support in testing and trying to carry on instruction, it's a hard thing to do. And I understand what you're saying. It's hard. We can't clone them to be put in 2 places at one time.
I understand that. I guess, is there just, I don't, maybe it's a staffing ratio. Is there something we can do to provide people who are familiar with our kids that could do one or the other? Because I was literally asked not to bring my child to school.
Well, that should never happen.
Well, they couldn't handle him. He refused to sit in the principal's office, and nobody had anything, and they were being very kind. Please don't get me wrong. This is even a year ago, and I'm not this past year, this year before. The problem is continuing, and it's not just my child. Maybe I'm the only one that got the phone call to bring the kid, but all the kids especially with all of the testing now. I mean, the testing is nonstop, which means it's not just SOL time. It's continuous throughout the school year that these kids are not getting their services
think that my recommendation for the situation as you describe it, and when I was in Washington, the typical practice that we would strive for is that if we knew that there were certain students who really absolutely needed to have appropriate supports in the classroom, to try to not utilize that individual to be pulled out to do test administration, to try to spread it out among a variety of other staff members, but to have an encouragement to not bring your child to school, that situation should never have to happen. And it just means that the school staff would need to sit down and take a look at their overall staffing and their schedule of testing to spread it out a little bit more, or look at what alternatives do they have for test accommodations, because every student should be able to have support in their classroom while we're still carrying on testing at the same time. We usually have enough staff members if they do scheduling creatively, but I know that some of the staff members here who have done it, it's been a major task, but it's able to be worked through if you really try hard enough. I'm hoping that wouldn't happen again, and if you can let me know outside of the meeting, we can maybe have a conversation with some of the staff at that school to make sure that that same thing doesn't happen, or we can guide them on how to schedule differently.
Is that at Yorktown?
No, this was at Drew a couple of years ago
Oh,
with
yeah.
my then second grader, and that special ed teacher has moved on to another school, so, but the overall problem continues.
Well-
I've had teachers come to me and say, "Can you bring this up?" And I'm going, "Yes, I will," because it was a problem for my child.
Well, because I guess some of the history of Yorktown, like, because on days where they do have the SOLs or the PSATs or the SATs, the rest of the school doesn't come.
Right, that's
Right,
in
and
the
then-
week, in the
yeah.
week of Memorial Day, that Tuesday through Friday.
Right.
In the mornings, there is only students who are testing.
Right.
And then I think other students are brought in a little after 11 o'clock. And I don't think that we, meaning APS as a whole, has authorized multiple days of, the only times when students might not come in is like during final exams, if they don't have an exam, but during SOL testing, the afternoons of that week, students should be in school. That's the typical pattern.
Yeah, because I know it became like a transportation issue and like a special education issue a couple years ago, because they basically said, just don't come. And then the parents were like, they didn't know that their kid was not supposed to be at school.
But that was an issue for MIPA families,
Yeah.
because their kids weren't getting any services or anything during that week. A student that's in a gen ed classroom receiving support, and at the high school level, I can see where that's okay, but in a gen ed, in a MIPA type classroom, you're withdrawing everything from them.
So students, the expectation is during those 4 days after Memorial Day, when there is testing only in the mornings, that students who are in functional life skills or in a MIPA, or if there were any other similar types of classroom settings, those students are expected to come at their regular time in the morning, because the functional life skills and MIPA teachers and assistants are still carrying on the regular instruction. With that exception, the rest of the high school would not come in until a little after 11 o'clock. That's the pattern and the expectation. And no child should be asked, or family should be asked to keep their child at home. That's not
Appropriate.
That's not appropriate in any way. No, not at all.
One thing to keep in mind too, when children are preparing to take tests, if they're not gonna be with their typical special education teacher, is to have them practice taking the practice test with whoever's gonna be administering the test to them. So if, you're pulling staff from around the building, when I taught in Fairfax, that was something that we did, we identified, okay, this child's gonna be with the guidance counselor for this math test. And so that child's not just shows up that day and suddenly they have a new adult giving them a test, because that can be very, obviously, anxiety producing. So just making sure that the staff that's actually going to be administering the test is who's also doing those practice tests in the week ahead, if possible.
Or at least introduce them.
Yeah, at least maybe one practice test, because you're right, a lot of times it's like somebody they don't even know,
Yeah.
which is not ideal.
Well,
And just
Sarah-
touching on that, one other thing that comes up with that is disruption in space, that people getting kicked out of their classrooms for the computer space.
I have a different topic if we're ready.
I've got one more.
Oh, go ahead.
So, this is not, I know every kid has their own unique services, but, last year, my understanding was that that APS, endorsed or chose to implement the Unstuck and On Target, curriculum. And I think that going forward, if they're serious about that training could provide a base to where if you have kids being pulled out, you have like one special ed teacher that has 3 different unique students taking tests, they can't be in 3 places at one time, at least the substitutes would have a base of a base training to work off of. They may not be able to provide all the services, but there would be some familiarity in the language they're using, the methods that they're using, the tools that they're using to help these kids get through that period. So I hope that APS is committed to this curriculum that they bought off on last year, and going forward, it's probably not going to help our kids. It's going to take a long time to get that to a point where it's, well-oiled machine, but in
Is this the one
future-
that's focused on flexibility?
Yeah, it's flexibility. It's just a defined set of tools that that kids can learn, that parents can learn, can use it at home, and that way the child is getting the same message both at school and at home. And if all the teachers are trained in this, they would get the same message no matter which class they're in or what setting they're in school. So I hope that APS is committed to that. It's called Unstuck and On Target. Last year there was a study done where they did, they chose, I don't know, a handful of schools, and some students were given this Unstuck and On Target, and then there was another one that they were also in parallel, another set of students were using. And my son was in the other one, I forget what the name of it is, and I wasn't really happy with it. But over the course of the year, they tracked how the students were doing, and by the end of the year, they had chosen the Unstuck and On Target curriculum to move forward with. So I hope that that's still moving forward.
So just for clarity, there's 2 different things that happened last year and the year before around Unstuck and On Target. APS the year before last had already purchased some, and we had a big training. That was a Saturday training,
That was a parent,
which
or
was
that was a teacher
wonderful.
training that SEPTA put on.
Accepted did that, right?
Yeah.
It was amazing, and a lot of people attended and really benefited from it, and we bought a certain amount of the, certain number of the curriculum at that time. Then when we expanded the social skills, or disaggregated some of the services for this high functioning autism program, where we had social skills and executive functioning, we started offering social skills classes in all the middle and high schools so that you didn't have to qualify for the program to get that support. We also extended our executive functioning supports, and again, we gave teachers and school staff Unstuck and On Target as a part of their toolbox to use in those classes. Then last year, what you're talking about was that Laura Kenworthy and her team approached Arlington Public Schools and asked us to participate in a study for them to determine the efficacy of Unstuck, or to build their documentation and research that shows the efficacy of Unstuck. And we had 3 schools that participated in the study, and they were assigned randomly, I don't know what their process was or whatever, randomly to one intervention program or the other by school, not by student. And Lauren Kenworthy's team provided training and supports for the families and the students. And so I think your son's school, and I can't remember the name of it either, because it wasn't anything as clever as Unstuck and On Target. It was something much more boring, like stop or something. But basically, it was also a proven practice around behavior management, but not the cognitive flexibility. And so their outcome, I haven't seen the outcome of their study. Fairfax County, other school divisions participated in it. But regardless of the outcome of the study, APS continues to support Unstuck and On Target because we found it to be helpful for our students in our classes, and it already had a certain level of research base behind it. So we're going forward with that. It wasn't ours to begin with, it came from Lauren Kenworthy's group, so.
Yes.
My comment is about the new intervention blocks, which are called different things at various schools, but, as schools figure this out, I'm wondering what guidance is being given regarding twice exceptional students? Because, a lot of schools are obviously using them for intervention, which I know is the purpose, but also for enrichment, for extensions of the curriculum for the gifted or high ability learners. And if you have a child who falls in both groups, is that child going to get, remediation, intervention, or are they gonna get enrichment during that block? So I'm wondering if any guidance has been provided to the schools on how to handle these situations. Is it supposed to be a case-by-case basis, or is there some guidance that can be provided to help the teachers figure out, you know, what these students where they should be?
I don't know, that is an important thing, the whole notion of intervention periods. I don't know, if we have time to respond to that now, but it is something that I can generate a response to be shared later.
I think, yeah, typically for the public comments, we give you some time.
To get back.
Yeah.
So we'll get
You don't
back
have to
to
feel
it.
so on the
I have
spot.
some thoughts I can share, but it will take more time away from this evening's, agenda, so I can't get back. It's all good.
I don't, related note to that, I was wondering, cause I think you're talking about the ATSS.
Right,
implementation.
yep.
Now that schools are getting into gear and implementing that, I can't remember if we had discussed as a committee whether we would have a report back on the implementation of ATSS. And if not, I do think it would be helpful to learn more about what's going on in the schools and how schools are approaching it. Is there consistency? Are we doing it differently?
Yes.
I honestly think that it's happening a little differently than I thought it was going to in our school. And I'm just wondering if that's a similar experience in other schools. So I think it would be helpful just to get a general report back. Maybe if we could spend one of the meetings on
Wait,
ATSS and.
Yeah.
Where did Kelly present? Kelly just presented to one of the advisory committees.
Oh, she went to the school board.
You should present this.
Right, but
School board.
did she just go to ELAC or,
Not this year.
no?
No, but, so
She must have been
we,
gifted.
I think
She's going to come to Gifted, but she
Yeah,
hasn't
that's what
yet.
it is, yeah.
it's not a recommending year for us, but every year we submit a report, and it is on our previous recommendations and the current status of them, so we have been getting feedback and then writing a note about, that's why our recommendation last year was to continue, you know, 2 years ago was ATSS, last year was to continue to support ATSS specifically with the hiring of some additional people. So we will this year well, we're gonna have to do a reporting in this year and address that, so, prior to that, we will try to get Kelly back here in an open forum meeting and then kind of present the status of ATSS, so we can make an informed.
Do you know when she's presenting the gifted?
I don't know when it's
Yeah.
happening. I'll find out though.
All right.
Back to what, just real quick, that's one thing that we're talking about is the twice exceptional committee. They're actually, it's a hot topic, trying to make sure that the kids don't get one or the other, but they're actually trying to find ways to make sure they get both. I don't know how it's gonna play out, and hopefully he has a better answer, but it is a topic.
All right, any other